Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar with ICAS and Mitigo. Mitigo is, of course, the ICAS preferred supplier for cyber security and our ICAS cyber security partner. So in this webinar today, I'm delighted to be joined by Kerrie Machin from Mitigo. We're going to have a look at various issues, I guess, in terms of particularly how firms are still getting cybersecurity wrong, what's going wrong, why that's happening, what are some of the key issues that firms are facing, what's happening out there in the real world. So we've really got an awful lot to cover during this webinar this morning. We'll be here for around 45 minutes or so, going over the various material and various chat type things. So during this webinar, you can, of course, ask questions. We have a Q&A facility that's available on the GoToWebinar platform. That should be available at the top of your screen. So do please just drop in any questions as we go along, and we'll try and answer them as soon as we can. We've put also in the chat facility there a PDF of the slides that Kerrie's going to be sharing today are available in that material section. So if you do want a copy of the slides from today, do please just go and download them. Other than that, everyone's mic is off and cameras are off as well. So don't worry about any background noise that might be around for you. So without further ado, Kerrie, I know we've got an awful lot to chat about and cover today. Just, I guess, start across with you.
Thanks very much, and good morning, everybody. Thanks, David. So yeah, there is a lot to go through. Why is there a lot to go through? Because my word, it's been a busy time, certainly across the last year in the cyber world, and it doesn't seem to be changing, does it? And just to give you some substance to that, many of you will be aware that the government publish a cyber breach report each year for businesses. So they took a look at 2025. They've just released it literally about 3 weeks ago, and the stats show that about 43% of businesses have been victim of cybercrime in 2025. Now, so that's almost one in two firms. That's not a big surprise, but what is the surprise is this. Is if you take a look at 2024's figures, statistics for cyber breaches, it was 43%. It was exactly the same. And the reason that that's a surprise is this. In our experience, we're seeing businesses spend more time, effort, and more importantly, money on technical solutions, so better endpoint protection, more money with their IT firms in cybersecurity. Yet the reality of that investment is it's not flowing through to better protection for organizations, because the rate is not going down, and with the introduction of far more skilled AI, and I'll talk about that in this presentation, we don't see it going down either. So something's going wrong, or to perhaps put it differently, something isn't going right. So what is that? So it does come down to governance, but it's going to come down to a lot more than that anyway. So let's crack on with the show, because as you can tell then from that introduction, there's hopefully some insight that I can give you to where we think firms are getting it wrong. So we are going to talk a little bit about the past, what happened last year. There were some really big high profile cases, and what can we learn from those? We're going to look at blind spots. We're going to have a look at, what does it mean to be ready? If it's almost inevitable that you're going to be the victim of cybercrime, and those stats are a 1 in 2 chance, how do we get ourselves ready for that? How do we prevent it from happening? How can we reduce you can reduce the risk of it happening for sure, but then let's also make sure that if it does happen, that it's not going to have as big an impact as it could do as well. And so those are the focuses of today's session. Many of you will know us, will have joined me for sessions previously. You will know that we, as David said, we're the preferred partner of ICAS, and we're proud to be that, but we work across the professional services sector. And so we work with lots of accountants in and out of practice, lots of legal firms, lots of financial services firms. I guess the thing is you've got something in common, and that is that you hold a lot of data that is very, very threat actors like it. I can't think of the right word, but you're very attractive. That's the word, and they can make quite a lot of money out of you, which is why they target you quite so heavily. Before we get on with the show, we are just going to have a quick poll, so I can get a flavour of how the audience is feeling about their preparation or preparedness, I suppose, for a cyber incident. So that's going to pop up on screen anytime soon. David might have to help me out because I can't see the poll on screen, but when it comes up, you've got 5 options there. So how prepared do you feel for cyber incident? So it's A, you're fully prepared. So that's you doing regular risk assessments and a tested incident response plan. You're mostly prepared, so you've done some stuff. You haven't tested it, so you're not quite sure that it would really get you there. Somewhat prepared, we've put there that IT tell you that you've got yourself covered. You're not really well prepared at all, or you've got really no idea, to be honest with you. It's not something you really worry about that much. And so yeah, David, if you can see the poll on screen, let me know, and can you shout out the results?
It's just disappeared. However, it
Yep.
was a very, very resounding situation. So 100%,
Yep.
everyone agreed. Everyone tells us that IT has got it covered.
Wow. Okay. So then I think there's some lessons to be learned today, and I think that
Absolutely. I think that's really interesting how that's come through, Kerrie. Yep.
Yeah, it is, because that's the theme. The theme of today is why that might not be the right strategy. Great. Well, thanks very much for your help there. So let's just take a look at the 3 big attacks from last year. So we started with Marks and Spencer's. Everybody was aware of this, a big ransomware attack. What was interesting here is this is what we call a supply chain attack, and we're seeing a huge growth in supply chain attacks. Think about cyber criminals. They have to get into your environment. That's the first thing. Let's get past the perimeter security, that multi-factor authentication, that antivirus, that firewall. How do they do that? A lot of getting through that perimeter is now looking at people within the supply chain, targeting them because they then have access to your systems, and then that gets them into the network. That's exactly what happened here with Marks and Spencers. We understand it was a help desk in a foreign country, an IT firm, we think, support desk, that they used social engineering to trick them into giving them access. That led them into the M&S system, and as we're all aware, it caused all manner of problems for M&S, and it was anticipated there was about £300 million of revenue loss. And obviously, you only had to walk into a store, and some of them had 16 pallets of milk, and some had none. Not to mention other things as well. So that was a bit of a nasty one. What was interesting when we move on to the co-op, it was exactly the same ransomware group that carried out the attack as the Marks and Spencers one, so the same people, and these were what we call affiliates. So they both groups used or licensed ransomware as a service from an organized cyber gang. So the way it works in reality is you have cyber gangs that create the malware, the ransomware software, which is incredibly sophisticated, and they license it out to other people, which decreases the bar, lowers the bar for entry into the cyber crime world. So yeah, both exactly the same. And as you'll see there, same technique, social engineering to trick a third-party help desk into system access. And again, we saw all manner of problems and big numbers. Again, a couple of $100 million in revenue loss. What was interesting about the co-op breach was that in October, the chief exec of the co-op wrote an open letter with the National Cybersecurity Centre to talk about their experience. And the bit that I took from it was how they actually were thankful of how much work they did in pre-breach, all the work they did to try and prevent this from happening. And actually the message from them was, if we hadn't have done this work, it would have been a whole lot worse, which I think is shocking to consider, that when you think there was a couple of £100 million pounds in revenue loss, that it could have been worse. And so, look, I know these are big organizations and it's what we read about in the news, but I think it's also just useful because these are the same sorts of things that are happening to small organisations as well. It doesn't just happen to these people. And then obviously JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, probably one of the biggest breaches of all time. The issue here was not just for JLR, but actually the wider supply chain, because so many businesses and organisations rely on JLR. That came from coffee shops and sandwich shops near the manufacturing plants to obviously then the supply chain of providing things for the manufacturing process. And again, I mean, a huge number, nearly £1 billion. We don't fully understand how this happened, but we believe it was more of a compromised credentials and a phishing email that gave them system access. So start to think about that. I mean, we all get phishing emails from time to time, and this led to one of the biggest attacks of all time. Scary stuff. So what did we? Yes, go. Yeah.
Can I just come in there, because obviously, I mean, the 3 examples that you've given there are great big massive organizations with massive resources. They've got the financial pressures, they have everything that they, or potentially they at least have the resources to not only prevent it in the first instance, but also then deal with it in the second instance. And I guess a lot of our members, and well, we know that 99% of the UK economy is SME businesses, and they're not operating at that scale.
That's
so
right.
They must be there sitting going, if these multi-million-pound companies, large companies with all the resources behind them, if they can't stop this, what chance have we got? Or actually, the other side of it also is actually that's where the cyber criminals are targeting. Therefore, we're not a target. It's not an issue for us in any case. And is there a big risk then that, I guess, the SME sector, which is massive for the UK economy, really are just going into this blind?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. So first of all, let's not. You're right. I mean, we talk about these breaches because they are infamous, I suppose. And yes, you could forgive firms for sitting there thinking, "What chance have I got?" Actually, I think you've probably got more of a chance to survive if you do the right things, because your network, your footprint is going to be smaller, and in some respects easier to understand the risk within it. But you still need to understand that risk within it and take the necessary steps. We here at Mitigo work predominantly with SMEs, and I mentioned earlier, David, that there's 2 things the criminals need. One is the access into the system, and then the second is to do what they want when they're inside it. And what these breaches showed, yes, against big businesses, but we're seeing it being replicated in the SME marketplace, which is that human beings are being exploited through social engineering. So, as I mentioned, we see it with accountancy practices, with legal practices, where the people are busy, they're working hard, they've got deadlines to meet. A phishing email comes in, and before you know it, you've clicked on it and it's allowed somebody into the system. It's about understanding where those processes are weak, where those humans are doing things that you don't want them to do. But then taking that a step further is then understanding where the weaknesses are and the risks are within your supply chain. The people joining today, David, will have smaller supply chains than people like Marks and Spencer's and the Co-op and JLR, but it's still important that you understand the risk that they bring toward your environment. And let's not forget, your IT company, your managed service provider, are somebody within your supply chain. And so all of a sudden you start to say, well, where should we put the spotlight? The spotlight should be across anybody that's providing or has a link into our systems in any way. It's not always possible, because sometimes if you're dealing with, let's say, individuals, the general public, you can't control their cyber hygiene. But if you've got software providers, or you've got other providers that you're working with, or other firms that you lean on a lot, then you do need to understand whether they can bring any risks to your organization. So, I think to sit there and think it'll never happen to me because I'm small is wrong. I think as a smaller organization, you are more open to chance. I think firms like Co-op and M&S are more likely to targeted by cyber criminals. I think with smaller organisations, this is more of a spray and pray. This is a let's send a load of phishing emails out because we've bought a list of them on the dark web and see who bites. That's certainly one way of getting in. When I go on in a minute, we're also going to see that AI is starting to improve the chances.
And I think you've mentioned supply chain a few times. I think we'll probably get into that a bit later on as well. But I think that's probably also a bigger risk. When you're talking about targeting, and if we think of there are a number of perhaps big software providers to the accountancy profession, and they may be the targets. So as you say, it's that supply chain risk, the targeting through those bigger entities,
yes,
and then the supply chain in. There's also a question that has come in from somebody in the audience. So the question is basically very, very simple. What did the attackers gain from the attack on those three large organizations?
Well, that's we don't know if they paid any form of ransom payment, because there would have been a ransom demand.
Yeah.
Because if you think about a ransomware attack, it tends to do two things, or attempts to do two things. The first is to prevent you from working, and clearly with all three of those organizations it did just that. And so what the criminals do is they will put a ransom demand towards the organization and say, if you give us X amount of money, and it will tend to be obviously in the millions, then we will give you access back to your systems. So we do see that happening, and it did happen with these people. More what you see, certainly with accountancy practices and people in professional services, is they want the data. So they will try and stop you from operating, but you're more likely to have your data stolen. Specifically going back to M&S and the others, we don't know whether they paid, and it could be that nothing was gained. That could actually be what happened out the back end of it. Or it could have been that they took a load of personal data. I remember seeing from, I think, certainly M&S and Co-op, early doors when they were reporting it to the public, they said none of the personal data had been stolen of their customers, and then I think within 2 weeks they realized actually a lot of personal data had been stolen. That's from memory. And so remember, that data can then be sold on and used for other attacks, for other people, for mimicking, impersonation, things like that. So there's an awful lot that could be done from it, even if they didn't make any money from those three organizations. I'm afraid. But those organisations, it's cost them an awful lot of money. And if you take that down to a more granular level with smaller firms, the costs are going to still be that. Then you're right, they're not going to lose 300 million, the people on here, because they haven't got it. But it would be relevant or relative to their size, the loss. And it's that then becomes very uncomfortable, and the impact of things like reputational damage, can drive smaller businesses under, as it were. We do see that, but generally it's not that it drives them out of business. It's just the fact that for anywhere between 3 to 6 months and even beyond, they can feel the impact of that cyber breach, unfortunately.
And just as you touched on costs there, I guess another question that's perhaps relevant to that is, what's your view in terms of cyber insurance? Is it worthwhile? Is it something that every business should have? Is it a nice to have? What's your view on those things?
It's a great question. I think the first thing is to understand what cyber insurance is or does, and the place that it plays within cyber risk management overall. So the first thing is, it is not a replacement for risk management. You still have to understand what risk and vulnerabilities exist within your organization and put the necessary controls in. And the purpose of the insurance policy is to transfer any risk that you couldn't identify. It's the transfer of residual risk, okay? So that if it happens, then you have a fallback position. So if you decide as an organization that you want that fallback position, then I think it's a good thing. In some respects, you could think of it like household contents insurance. You hope you never have to claim on it. Doesn't mean you're going to leave your doors and windows open, but if the criminals do break in and steal all of your valuables, or do things you don't want them to do, then you can claim. but your insurance company would have terms that that ask you to adhere to in the same way that they do in cyber insurance. So they will ask you to be doing lots of different things, and you will have to prove to them that you are doing those things if you had a cyber breach. So in my opinion, and I'm certainly not qualified to sell it or recommend it, I think you'd be mighty pleased you had it if you had a cyber breach,
Yeah.
but you've got to make sure that you take it for the right reasons and that you can adhere to the policy T's and C's, because we do know that insurers don't want to pay out if they don't have to.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
We've sort of gone off track there, Kerrie, but
That's all right. That's okay.
I'll let you come back on.
No, bring it back a bit. I'm just following the theme here of obviously what we were seeing with Marks and Spencers and the like, and to look at trends more in what we're seeing. So I've talked about supply chain. So there are risk assessments that you can that you should and could be doing with your supply chain. If you're not considering that, then you need to consider that. So you need to know what to ask, and you need to know what to do with the answers that you're getting back from them. Social engineering is huge. Everybody's putting we all put information out about us out onto the internet, okay, be that on social media, on LinkedIn, all sorts of things, and criminals are very quick at gathering that information. It can be done at a touch of a button, and it brings in lots of information about an organization or the people within it, and then they can use that as leverage to carry out an attack. So it could be that an email they send you sounds mighty familiar, that it's like they know you. A phone call, a phishing call, which I've put at the bottom there, or point number 5 on this slide, where they phone you and they know an awful lot about you, and it would seem very realistic. Phishing emails are becoming almost impossible to spot now because of AI, and AI is allowing them to do two things. One is to create a perfect email written in good English that makes logical sense, which is taking information from all sources. And then more importantly, we're also seeing phishing as a service, so software provision or malware provision, where it can bypass multi-factor authentication as well. So even though you will have some form of email security, please don't underestimate the power of phishing. If JLR was indeed something to take note of, that's what caused it in the first instance. We still see really poor password hygiene. I think because people see that they have multi-factor authentication in place, they don't have to worry too much about passwords, people duplicating passwords. Where criminals are preying is that people save them to their web browsers, and the web browsers are held in the cloud, and there's poor security of that cloud provision, and therefore they can pick up usernames and passwords, and there's billions of usernames and passwords for sale out on the dark web. And remember, if MFA isn't set up properly, and I've got a stat on a slide a bit later that will show you, and I'll tell you the stat now, it's about 3/4 of the firms where we carry out audits on them that their multi-factor authentication would fail or is not configured properly. Therefore, it's important that you get that username and password hygiene in check. But what you'll notice with all of these things, these are all methods of bypassing perimeter security, is getting in the front door, and they're getting really good at it. And of course, the second thing they then need is the ability to do what they want once they get inside. So I wanted to talk a bit about a ransomware attack that we saw on a small accountancy practice just recently. It was in January that we dealt with, and I guess I've started it with a scary slide. But across the period of about 2 weeks where we were working with the firm, these are some excerpts from the emails that were being received by the firm from the threat actors. We have also downloaded all your files. We are working with your data and find a lot of interesting, it's poor English, it was written that way. We have contacts of your clients from your network, personal data of your clients. If you ignore us, we will post a demo version on blogs, and then you've been warned. The 24-hour period has expired. You haven't contacted us. We have published a blog about your data breach, and we'll begin distributing links to clients, employers, partners, local media and government agencies. And I just put that out there you know, people, you can accuse me of scaremongering for sure, but I think the fact is this is a small firm, okay, 80 people. They, as I go through this, you'll see that they had some real fundamental issues in the way that they'd set their security posture up. But put yourself in the position of them if you started receiving those emails because you had a breach. It's a very stressful thing to go through, and I think sometimes, you know, the use of case studies, whilst it can be, as I say, we could be accused of scaremongering, this is the reality of what happens to small organisations. So let me talk you through what happened. So effectively, on a Saturday in January, some members of staff wanted to log in and work from home remotely through their remote desktop. Some of you will be using remote desktops, and they couldn't gain access to the network. And they contacted their IT company, MSP, managed service provider, from here on in. And the MSP said, look, you're the victim of a ransomware attack, and unfortunately, we're going to need to try and get you out of the encryption. So their systems were encrypted, couldn't get into it. So what the MSP did is they took a look at the backup for Friday, because like yourselves, you'll all have backups, and they attempted to do what we call a restore. So and they couldn't, it had been encrypted as well. So then they went and were very fortunate that actually they took a look at Thursday's backup, and that was still intact. Now that's unusual. The fact that they'd got into Friday, you'd think that they would have got into everything and wiped the lot or encrypted all of it, but they didn't. And so the MSP effectively restored the system from Thursday's backup. So they only lost Friday's work. And across the period of Saturday and Sunday, they got the firm back up and running, ready for Monday morning. And so everybody, as you can well imagine, breathed a sigh of relief. We got away with that one, didn't we? Roll forward to the Tuesday, and unfortunately, clients and staff started to receive emails from the threat actors stating that they had their data, and they dripped a little bit out just to prove that they had it. And it was at this point where the firm realized that the ransomware attack was far worse than they had originally anticipated. And so at that point, they engaged our services, and they wanted to know what had happened, and they wanted to know what data had been taken. And because obviously they've got reporting responsibilities to their clients, to the regulators, personal data under GDPR, and it was a bit of a panic. We need to know what's gone wrong here. So we started to do some forensics on it, and we came across a few problems, and I'll go through those problems now. But effectively, we took a look through the systems, and what we recognized is the payload, the ransomware payload, was actually delivered on the Tuesday previously, okay, before they carried out the attack across the Friday night and into the Saturday. The problem with that, of course, is that when the MSP did the backup, the restore on the Thursday, they also restored or reloaded the malware back into the network, because they took a mirror image of what existed. And of course, across Wednesday and Thursday, the malware had been backing up into the systems. So if that in itself isn't enough to cause concern, the other problem that we had, so when we started doing the work, basically the malware was still there, the ransomware was still in there, and the criminals were still in. But the problem is that in doing the restore, the MSP had deleted all of the data. So we couldn't tell the firm how much data had been stolen from them, because we'd lost all of the logs. And so the MSP hadn't really dealt with the breach very well. It was inappropriate the way they dealt with it. What you need to do is just stop and take a look at it, understand what the threat actors are going to do. Clearly, the MSP didn't know that the threat actors wanted to take data. There was no, and there was no real record of being able to do that. And so what actually happened here is the firewall was breached. So everyone here will have a firewall, and the criminals basically threw 200,000 password attempts at it. So one of the reasons why we want to make sure that passwords are strong and unique is obviously because of that. That said, there's a fundamental issue here, because the firewall shouldn't have allowed 200,000 attempts without shutting down. The antivirus actually did its job, and it quarantined the malware. This is what we found from looking at the logs from the backup on the Tuesday. It did quarantine it, but there was no alert to anybody. So effectively, the antivirus has said, right, I've captured you. You're bad. But it didn't tell anybody, and it didn't really know what to do with it, so it just stayed there. By this time, the threat actors had taken a foothold within the network, and then they just released it and turned the antivirus off. They obviously got into the backups and compromised those. They exfiltrated data again. Unfortunately, we couldn't work out how much. And you might say, well, the firewalls would tell you what's coming in and out. Well, the firewall's only set up to capture 12 hours of information, and by this time we were way past the point of exfiltration. So all manner of problems, and of course the MSP restoring the malware was just a huge issue. So if we look at governance failures, because this is all about governance, right, and understanding the things that you should be doing and undertaking in order to make sure that this can't happen. So I think the biggest thing is this: there was no ownership at board level. When we spoke to the owner of the firm, what did they say? They said what most people say to us when they come to us: I thought my IT was taking care of this. So cybersecurity or cyber risk management was being treated as an IT problem. It's far bigger than that, clearly. There was no risk assessment, so nobody understood what the risks were. And there was multiple failings here, yeah, from the antivirus not working properly, to the firewall not being configured properly, to the backups not being looked at properly, to no data loss prevention being in there, to the MSP being incapable of being able to carry out any response effectively to a cyber attack. And so if we've got no visibility of that risk, we can't control those things properly. So clearly this is what happened. And then, even basic things like incident response plans, there was no incident response plan. It was panic. It was phone us up. What do we do next? And as we go through good governance in a few slides time, these are all things that they're not just a good idea. You need to be doing them. And the government now, not just us, the government regulators are beating a big drum to say to people, you need to get a grip of understanding what your cyber risk is. You need to understand that it's not your IT or your MSP's job to do that. They're typically, I'm going to say not capable of it. That might be unfair for some MSPs, but the majority are not, because it's a different discipline. But even if they are, if you ask them to do a risk assessment, are you getting a risk assessment, or are you just getting a review of their performance because they're just marking their own homework, really? And that's a no-no from an audit perspective. Any accountant on here will tell you that. So that risk assessment should be done by somebody impartial with the right skills to do that. So anyway, those are the failings that we saw. And leading on, and these are some of the stats. I'm going to put these straight up on screen. These are some of the things that we find typically when, and so if I draw back to the poll that we did at the beginning, David, and you said 100% of people said we're leaving this to their IT firms to do it. If that case study doesn't tell you that tells you nothing more than get somebody else to look at it that's impartial or independent. We also looked at these statistics. We do audits all the time. So we do risk audits, cyber risk audits of firms, and we look at people, we look at technology, we look at their policies, we look at their governance, and we understand what they look like holistically. But if you just take the technical blind spots that we find, so the things that firms think their IT are looking after, we obviously have risk ratings, so low, medium, and high, and then we have critical risk ratings, i.e., this is a big problem and you need to sort it out now. Look at 500 audits that we conducted. 96% of those audits have had problems with user access management. What that means is it's far too easy. People have got the ease of access to the systems is just far too simple. Threat actors would get in very simply. 3/4 of the audit showed that MFA was weak or non-existent. Patching was missing, a similar number. This has surprised people. 73% of firms have a critical risk rating with regards to email security. Most firms will have email security in place, but it isn't configured properly. And the thing that you are relying on to protect you from phishing emails or other things just isn't there. And as I say, that's fact based on things that we've seen. And then again, look at that, 65% of antiviruses that we look at are misconfigured. So again, a piece of tech that you're relying on to do the job, and the case study highlights exactly what went wrong there. It is an issue. And then some people ask us, so are we safer in the cloud, Kerrie, or are we safer if we have on-premise servers? And the answer to that is they're completely different risks, and they're both places that can cause you problems. And about half of the firms that we look at have those issues when it comes to network security.
Can I just
Yeah,
I'm conscious of time and don't want to drag us off in another direction too much
okay.
again, but I'm just wondering, why do businesses struggle to think that cyber risk is a business risk?
I think
Is it
because
ignorance? Is it just that reliance that they think somebody else is dealing with it?
I think it's both of those things. I think uh, where do you go to for cybersecurity? And you say, oh, well, my IT does that for me, don't they? Because they sell you antivirus, they sell you firewalls, they set things up. We expect you to have those things in place, but because the risk is so vast and is so complex, it's about saying, well, have you done a risk assessment? But people don't think to do that because they just think that it's being looked after. So I'm going to go with ignorance, which I think is a really strong word, but I think it's the truth. And actually, I think this takes us on nicely, actually, David, because I'm also conscious of time. I know I've been talking a lot. I'm gonna tie this in with what the government is expecting, but also AI, because people talk to us about AI all the time. Now, there's different ways that you can consider AI. How are you using it within your organization? Should you use it in certain ways? Well, is that a cyber risk, or is that a business, is that a confidential information risk, your client's information risk? It's probably a bit of both, but actually the thing that businesses need to get to grips with is the fact that AI is improving the chances of threat actors getting in. And in April, the government looked at so Anthropic are an organisation a lot of people would have heard about in the news. They have Claude as a product that you'd know, but they've got something called Mythos, and effectively the government looked at it as an offensive, I should say, cyber product. So, and it is a substantially more capable at cyber offence than any model previously assessed. So effectively what Mythos does goes, in basic terms, it will go across the internet looking for vulnerabilities within firms and then work out how to exploit them, and do it very, very quickly and at a scale that no human can possibly do. And in an open letter to business leaders, the government said, so this is in April, it said, you've got to discuss cybersecurity regularly. This is not an issue to delegate to your IT team and forget about, and we urge you and the board to use the cyber governance code of practice to ensure that your organisation is sufficiently protected, and plan and rehearse how your organisation would respond. So the government fully recognise that it's being left to IT far too often. But I'll tell you what the answer is this. Who pays the bill if this all goes wrong? It's not the IT provider. It's the board of the company, it's the owners of the company, it's the profits that it's going to eat into. Okay. And that's why it's so important to understand who's responsible for this. It's the board's responsibility to engage the right people, to be able to tell them where their problems are so that they can manage them effectively. That's it in a nutshell. And again, I'm going to scoot through this, but there are slides available. That cyber governance code of practice, this is just a fantastic method of how to run things, right? 5 themes: risk assessment, strategy, people, plan, incident planning, assurance and oversight. And very quickly to go through them. Risk assessment. You have to start with the risk assessment. Most firms don't, because they just leave it to IT. Okay. And therefore you're not really making decisions about your security based on any facts. You're just guessing at what the right things are to put in place. The risk assessment will tell you what your problems are, who your problems are, because it should be around people, tech, policy, and governance. Yeah. And then you can start to work out what your strategy is, and you should be doing this at least annually. The strategy then is driven from the risk assessment. Okay, now we can make decisions about the tech that we buy, about the protections we put in place, about the policies that we have, about how we want people to work, and so on and so forth. And it will tell you how often you should be testing that, proving it, and then actually you'll spend the money in the right places, because I bet everybody on this call has spent money on cyber security in the last 18 months, more money I should say. But what process did you go through in order to make the decision as to where to spend the money? Proper risk assessment and strategy tells you, actually, you've got the right equipment, you just need to configure it better. Or, no, that's the wrong equipment, this would be the right equipment. But what it will also do is give you far more peace of mind, because you're making it decisions based on risk fact. Then obviously we've got the people. We've got to make sure if you're not carrying out cyber awareness training with your team, please do that. It's cheap, it's not expensive to do it, and get it done. Train them, do simulated attacks on them, because about 85% of cyber breaches are a result of humans doing something wrong here. Yeah, understand their behavioral risks, understand your business process risks, and then put your policies and your tech in place to make sure you're managing it properly. And it has to come from the top. So if the people at the top are leaving it to IT, then that's the wrong message. The message is, this is a business risk. If this happens, this is going to impact our bottom line, our top line and our bottom line. We're going to lose clients, we're going to lose profit, we're going to lose reputation. And therefore, it has to come from the top down and through the organization, because it impacts everybody. Get that incident response plan in place. Again, there's a couple of slides here that will help people, but effectively it is get your risk assessment done and then work out how you're going to respond to an incident if it happens, who you're going to go to. That firm, that the case study demonstrates that they went to the wrong people to help deal with the problem when it happened. Point 2B here is, how are you going to communicate in the midst of an attack? Because you can't be B and C together. You can't use your email systems because the criminals are probably in there, or it might not work at all. But you're going to get calls from the press, from your clients. You've got to talk to the regulators. You've got to talk to your staff. How are you going to communicate? What are you going to communicate? And this is all going to happen very quickly. You've got to train people, train a response team, make sure your backups withstand the attack. The case study again demonstrates a couple of things there, and test it. One of the biggest things we're getting asked for by firms at the moment, for those that do have incident response plans, and by the way, the government suggests that there's only about a quarter of firms that have one, but those that do have it, we're getting a lot of people coming to ask us if we can test it with them and carry out, we call them fire drills, but a desktop exercise where we mimic an attack and we walk through it and see how they would fare if it happened. And then the last part, and we're drawing to the end here as well, you'll be pleased to know, but the last part, and this is so important, right, is the assurance. How do you know that what you've got in place is actually working? Who's got the oversight of it? That case study tells you everything you need to know around assurance and oversight. There was no oversight. There was no assurance. There was absolutely no independence. The MSP were marking their own homework. There was no impartiality. So everything that was put in place was not necessarily at the firm's best interests. It was shaped by the MSP's role in the process, and obviously didn't protect the firm. The oversight was coming from somebody within the supply chain, which caused a further problem. People like Mitigo, we're not within the supply chain. We are the oversight and the assurance. We look at the IT, we look at the business. We then work with the board to say, these are your problems. This is how you're going to manage it. That's how we bring the specialism to it. But it's really important just to recognise this isn't all about technology. Yeah, it's far wider than that, and that's where a lot of firms also go wrong. So there it is. So just to give you, I guess, three simple things. Yep, get a risk assessment done by someone independent, get the right strategy in place, and then basically get a regime of governance, assurance and oversight to prove that your strategy actually works, and you're not sitting there hoping that it works. And what you'll actually end up with is some peace of mind and security as well. So a bit shameless, I accept that, but we can do all of those things that I've been talking about, from risk assessments through to penetration testing, to training, to assurance of supply chain for our clients. So if you are interested, then please do reach out to us either through ICAS or or our details will be on these slides as well. It costs nothing to talk to us, to give you some options of things that you might be able to do. But the final thought to this, before we take any further questions, which is preparation is everything. If you prepare, you've got a good chance of resisting an attack in the first place, and the fallout of it being nowhere near as bad as it could be. Drive it from the top, get the right people to help you. It isn't your IT provider. It's expected of you by your regulator, your supply chain, your governments, your clients, and yourselves. And as I say, we can help. So I mentioned that, you know, we can offer you a free, no obligation 60-minute cyber review. What does that entail? That entails sitting down with someone like me for about an hour, having a chat. We'll ask you a load of questions, understand what the things that you're doing, that you've got in place, and then we'll be able to give you some ideas of things that you might do going forward. Some of those would be solutions that we can sell to you, and for others, you know, it might be that you sit there saying, okay, I think I'm on the right track, and we can go from there. So if David, you can tell me when that poll disappears, because again, I'm boxing a little bit blind, so I can't see the poll itself.
That's fine. So we'll let that poll run at the moment. While that's running just now, just one question that's come in, which is, can you spot a phishing email by going to look at the detailed email address?
Yeah, normally you can, is the truth. Yeah, so if you just hover over, you know, if it had the name Kerrie Machin, my name on there, and you just hover over it, you'll then see that the email address is bogus, because a lot of them use spoofed email domains. So the other thing is, you've just got to be careful, because it might look incredibly close to the actual email address that you expect it to come from. So if you see my email address on there where it's got mitigogroup.com, the threat actors might change one of those I's to a 1, and it would just you know, at a quick glance you wouldn't notice the difference. So there's all manner of things. They can be cloaked so that you can't tell the difference. It's very difficult. If in doubt, you know, pick the phone up to a known phone number of the person that sent it to you. So, you know, don't take it off of the email that you've just been sent. We've seen that. We've seen people phone up the threat actors and say, "Hey, I've just received this email. Is this from you?" "Oh, yes, it's from me. Yes." And then they make payments that they shouldn't be making. But if in doubt, just stop for a minute. Yeah, it could save you a whole lot of bother.
Yeah, we saw recently from a member a phishing email, and where, again, they'd done a really good job of it and all the rest of it, and they had included, as you say, the phone number at the bottom. I think they had just changed one digit in it.
Yeah.
So again, you know, just very easy. If you're very quick going across it, you would think it was the same phone number that you had in your contacts and all the rest of it. So yeah, as you say, they're very clever and use all those social engineering tricks. So yeah, so
Yeah.
Kerrie, thank you very much. We've run out of time. I'm pleased to say there was some interest on the poll in terms of being contacted around that. But I think, you know, to me, the three things that came across very clearly were around risk management. Make sure you're doing that risk management and doing that exercise. Very, very important in terms of training your people. And making sure they're aware of the risks, and I think that's probably the biggest weakness, because as we saw from all the three attacks, or at least two of the attacks earlier on in terms of M&S and the co-op, it was the people that was the weakness there, and very clearly cybersecurity is not solely an IT problem. And make sure you deal with that appropriately. So, Kerrie, thank you very much for that. For everyone that's joined the webinar today, I hope you found it useful, and do please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, David. Goodbye.